Contending with Christianity's Critics is available. You can go to reasonablefaith.org, and you open up a chapter with Dawkins Delusion.
The focus of my brief essay in this book is what Dawkins calls the central argument of my book, and that is that there cannot exist a designer of the cosmos, because that simply raises the further question, who designed the designer?
James Daniel Sinclair talks about At Home in the Multiverse.
Jim Sinclair offers a refutation of this attempt to avert the force of the fine-tuning argument through appeal to a multiverse.
Victor Reppert, The Argument from Reason.
It's the idea that rationality and the mental requires some sort of ultimate mind or source behind the cosmos.
There's been so much in the news lately that we are hardwired to believe in God. Michael J. Murray takes this on.
Murray assesses the evidence for this claim, but then also assesses that if the claim is true, what significance would this have for theism?
Chapter 5 was written by Mark D. Linville. He takes on the moral poverty of evolutionary naturalism.
He argues that on naturalism, again, naturalism defeats itself. It would point out that these oughts, or the sense of ought, is something for which we have no objective basis.
Rounding out Part 1, Gregory E. Gansel, he evaluates Dawkins' best argument against God's existence.
What Greg does in his chapter is take a very sympathetic view of Dawkins' book and tries to reconstruct what he would take to be Dawkins' best argument.
Part 2, Chapter 7, The Criteria for the Gospel's Authenticity, Robert H. Stein.
This is a chapter that I wish all adult Christians in Western society would master. What Stein does is he goes through the various criteria that historians use to establish the authenticity of Jesus' words and events, and shows how they work, and then gives examples in the Gospels for facets of the life of Jesus that are established on the basis of these criteria.
Ben Witherington writes Chapter 8, Jesus the Seer.
He shows on the basis of criteria of authenticity that we have good grounds for thinking that Jesus regarded himself as this sort of divine human figure that appears in Daniel's vision of the Son of Man, to whom all dominion and authority and power is given by God.
Chapter 9 from Gary Habermas.
He goes behind the Gospels and the New Testament letters to look at their sources and shows how close these sources go back to the original events that they describe.
Chapter 10 is from Craig Evans, How Scholars Fabricate Jesus. Chapter 11, How Badly Did the Early Scribes Corrupt the New Testament? An examination of Bart Ehrman's claim. Dan Wallace examines this.
Yes.
Michael J. Wilkins wraps up Part 2 of this book with Chapter 12, and Who Did Jesus Think He Was? Chapter 13 opens up Part 3, The Coherence of Theism.
This is a chapter by Charles Tolliver, and he examines the principal attributes of God.
Paul Copan does Chapter 14, and it's on the Trinity. And he asks, is the Trinity a logical blunder? Chapter 15, Did God become a Jew?
This is a defense of the classic doctrine of the two natures of Christ.
Chapter 16, I love the title of this, Dostoevsky, Woody Allen, and the Doctrine of Penal Substitution, from Steve Porter.
He's defending the classic doctrine of Christ's vicarious death for the sins of humanity.
Boy, this is a biggie. Chapter 17, Hell, Getting What's Good My Own Way. Who wrote this chapter?
Stu Getz, and he defends a view of hell as God's giving people what they ultimately want, that is to say, complete autonomy.
Chapter 18 wraps up the book, and David P. Hunt takes on this. What does God know? The problems of open theism.
Basically, open theism is the view that God doesn't know the future.
Contending with Christianity's Critics, Answering the New Atheists and Other Objectors. It's available at reasonablefaith.org. And just wrapping it up today, Bill, this book can answer a lot of the questions that are being asked right now.
I think it does give a very good survey of contemporary criticisms of Christianity and provides really rock-solid answers to those questions.